another week of the Maryville Forum Sports Podcast with myself, John Dykstra, and Anthony Crane bouncing around over there. But we get into another week of football this week as we get ready for week 3 and recap a little bit of what happened in week 2. It was a lot better week for our local schools, save South Holt, Nottoway Holt, this week. But we'll start with Maryville, who had probably the game of the week. There's a couple nominees for that this week, but 42-40 is pretty good with Harrisonville, especially the twists and turns that game took. But it was a big win for the Spoof Hounds to get to 1-1 and hopefully get a few more guys back this week, and a huge game for Caden Steckline.
Yeah, I was really surprised at that result. I really expected them to struggle. Even last week, I think I picked them to lose to Harrisonville.
I was going to say, Matt Webb fighting down the six.
Yeah, I think a lot of people may have. They really shocked some people, and it was good to see them rebound from that week 1 loss, especially with everything going on.
Yeah.
So for you, what did you see from Connor Drake in his first start at quarterback? And then obviously we'll talk about Caden a little bit, his giant performance.
Yeah.
But really for me, the biggest question was the quarterback position.
Yeah, Connor Drake, I mean, Maryville's done this before, not in recent years really, with a more inexperienced quarterback and him just kind of coming in and, as Matt Webb said over and over again these last few or couple weeks, do his 1/11th, and he doesn't have to do anything more than that. It's a lot of, in Maryville's offense, obviously, it's a lot of handoffs, it's a lot of play fakes, it's really ball handling back there and just being smart with what you do, and then make a big throw when you need to, and that's what he did on the game-winning touchdown pass, hitting Cade Wilmus out there. And Cade with a nice catch to bring it in. But that was really the story for Connor. And coming back from that pick 6 he threw early in the second half as well on a little botched screen pass where you could tell things kind of got sped up for him a little bit. And he threw it out there, and the biggest guy on the field for Harrisonville caught the ball and rumbled into the end zone. So just coming back from that, keeping his cool, he kind of showed that although he doesn't have the experience, he is a junior back there, and he knows what he's doing back there. So it was just a really good outing for Connor Drake.
Yeah, and we really had some running backs stand out in the areas, ones that we didn't expect. We'll start with Caden and, his performance on Friday night.
Yeah, Caden Steckline. Being gone last year, I didn't get to see him as a freshman really in any of his sports. I'd been hearing about him and seeing him since his dad is the basketball coach, and Creed, his older brother, played basketball. So I'd see him out there playing basketball and heard about his summer stuff. I pegged him as a basketball player, but he's a multi-sport guy, that's for sure, after this week. Over 300 yards rushing. They obviously didn't have him the first week. He was on a different schedule than some of the other quarantined kids. He wasn't actually quarantined last week. He was quarantined earlier in the practice season, so he just needed to make up some practices to have the correct number that you need to play. So he made those up last week and showed that they kind of missed him a little bit. So 300 yards seemed like every time he was touching it, he was going for at least 30. So just a big performance from Caden. They should get another running back, Connor Weiss, back this week. So they're never going to have that full group that they pictured at the beginning of the year because obviously Ben Walker's done for the year. But to get all their running backs back, especially with the system Maryville runs, is going to be huge going into the conference opener this week against Chillicothe. But we'll touch on that a little bit more later.
What is the overall status of the team heading into this week as far as those kids that have been quarantined? what are they looking at numbers wise? I understanding this is Wednesday and things can happen in 2 days.
Well, Wednesday was a big day for him because Wednesday is when a whole bunch of those kids come off of quarantine because that's when they had the cases, and it's been 2 weeks now. So a bunch of those kids that were quarantined for contact tracing will come off today and should be available for this week. With the new rules that the school board and Superintendent Becky Albright announced earlier in the week, I wrote a column about that because while the split classes and having the hybrid virtual and a little in-person class is kind of confusing and kind of a pain, if you look at it from strictly a sports perspective, it's really going to help because they can actually social distance in class and not be within 6 feet. And that's why you've been missing all these athletes in several sports. It's not because they're positive, it's because they've been sitting close enough to somebody else that is positive. So to have that actual social distancing in place, it should cut down on the crazy numbers of kids that have been quarantined that don't even have the virus. So that should help going forward, not only football, but all sports, because they've all been affected by this contact tracing that's been going on.
And, and we talk a lot mostly about football on here, but I covered, soccer against Cameron. They were missing 3 or 4 guys. I know that tennis has been missing some people. You really have your ear to the ground there in Maryville. What are the other sports looking like as far as players coming back?
Softball's been down 2 outfielders, Alona Cross, who I haven't gotten to see play at Maryville yet. She was at North Nottoway last I knew, so I'm excited to see her. And Emily Casava, who's a senior this year, who I've seen play basketball and I've seen play volleyball, but I haven't seen play softball yet either. This was going to be her first year, and apparently softball's kind of her thing to hear her tell it. So I feel bad for her finally getting to play with the school team and then having to sit these first couple weeks. But softball should get those 2 back. Tennis, like I said, has had the whole team out, the whole varsity team that is out. They've been playing some JV, so they will have some back. Soccer, you touched on, they're 2-0, but they've been playing really shorthanded of late. Volleyball is kind of unstoppable freight train right now, but they're still down a couple key players. So across all sports, really, they're missing a few. Cross country is without their numbers 2, 3, and 4 boys runners, so they're really the Garrett Dumpke show, and then some young guys stepping up, and Jake Walker too, but a bunch of young guys there. So all the sports, kind of Wednesday was a day we were circling to get some people back. So it's pretty exciting going into this next week to really get a first look at some of these teams. Even though they played games, they haven't played games with their team all intact yet. So to see how some of these kids getting back will fill in some gaps should be really interesting over these next couple weeks. But speaking of filling in some important gaps, Platte Valley had Carter Luke get injured early in that game and against Rockport on Friday. And you would think with your number 1 running back going down, all of a sudden you lose that rushing element of the offense, but it was quite different. I know you were out there, Anthony. Tell us a little bit about Jose Rivera.
Yeah, well, I just read some other news. I'll start with, in the 8-man football before we get into Platte Valley. It seems like St. Paul Lutheran had a player test positive. So, the 8-man, it's been an issue so far. And so it seems like St. Paul Lutheran's going to sit out, and Bramer will not play for the next 2 weeks as well. So
yeah,
it seems like Yeah, it seems like we're fighting that issue everywhere. But
Gotcha.
yeah, with Platte Valley, it was quite an interesting game last Friday. I get there, I see that their starting quarterback, who I had seen played well in the first week, was out. Their head coach was gone. He was in quarantine as
This
well.
for Rockport, right?
Yes, yes, and then also one of their running backs was out. And then so you think this is a good opportunity for Platte Valley to jump on them, but then the opening kickoff, Carter Luke hurts his arm. From what I understood, maybe there was a dislocation in the elbow, fractured wrist, something along those lines.
It's been pretty widely posted. He broke his arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, his mom
So
put it out there the other day, so I think we're safe
yeah.
saying it.
So so that was a big hit for them. And then to have a player that I really knew nothing about, and Jose Rivera play the kind of game that he did was amazing. He was just so much faster than everyone else on the field, and you could see that on both of his 57-yard touchdowns and the 40-yard. And the 40-yard was maybe the more impressive because he started right and pulled kind of a Dalton Luke, where he cut back, reverse field, and went down the left sideline for the touchdown. It was really impressive. And then for a guy that maybe didn't have the almost 200 yards rushing, Gabe Nostine was really creating some holes for him at the fullback position. I think he had 8 or 9 carries for 50 yards. And speaking to him after the game and Coach Brevlin, it wasn't a position he had really practiced. They just kind of threw him into the fire. And it looks like moving forward, though you're going to miss Carter Luke both offensively and defensively, they have some guys that can fill those holes in the backfield and seem to do a pretty good job against a Rockport team that, though they were down a couple pieces, is still a solid team. And this week, and we'll get into this later on, this is an opportunity for them to win back-to-back games for the first time in a while.
Yeah, and they're going to be trying to do that against Northwest Nottoway, who came off a little disappointment against Stewartsville, a game that they were certainly hoping to win, and then face an angry Wolves team coming off of a loss to Southwest Livingston. But East Action came to Northwest Nottoway and really took control of that game in the second quarter and in the second half. But Northwest Nottoway kind of gave them a game early. Just were you a little surprised to see the Muskets come out with that good fight and actually take a couple leads early? They were up 6-0, then 12-6 early in that game before obviously the wheels came off a little bit.
Yeah, early on Friday night, there were a lot of surprising things around 8-man football, and that was one of the biggest surprises was the fight that the Muskets put up early on. And we've seen that from them in the past. They go against, a South Hole team that, eventually would pull away from them. But they've shown the ability to put up a fight early on. And, we've talked about for the last few weeks the need for them to improve week to week, and having success like that early on in games can only help them down the road. East Atchison, while there's lost some pieces from last year, is still a really good team, and they'll have to learn, what happened from the first quarter to the second to third to fourth quarter and improve on those things. But it's a good sign for them that they showed the ability to put up that kind of fight and to be able to stand toe to toe with some of those better teams in their conference.
I need to apologize to Coach Coffey, though. Last week I got on here and I said I don't understand why East Action doesn't give Caleb Merriweather the ball more. They gave him the ball a lot this week. He had almost 200 yards, 5 total touchdowns. What do you think was they certainly weren't saving them for the Muskets and keeping them away from Southwest Livingston, right? Is that just a coaching adjustment you think that they made between week 1 and week 2 when you sometimes see some of that get made?
Well, Coach Behrens and I talked quite a bit from East Atchison, And speaking to him after the loss to Southwest, we joked about his team playing like dog crap, is the way he put it. Informed me that I was more than free to use the other word when talking about it. So you kind of had the feeling that after that opening week, they were going to adjust what they were doing. And you could see in that opening week that having Kalen out at receiver was not uh, the best way for them to be successful offensively. And maybe, Coach Barron's being the good coach that he is, realized that. Because I don't think they're going to get the same production from the quarterback position they've had in the past with Jake McEnany, who could get Kalen the ball out of receiver. So,
And then we moved down south here to the team that I believe in, but you will not give them any credit, is Southwest Livingston. And
whoa, whoa,
they
whoa.
just came out and really, really thumped South Holt and Ottaway Holt, and in what was the premier game of the week. But Southwest Livingston kind of showed that there was no fluke what they did to East Ashton. So I'll let you defend yourself with the Southwest Livingston crew down there. But just how impressive was that performance by Southwest Livingston, and what adjustments can South Holt and Ottaway Holt make as the season goes on?
Well, first of all, I don't know how many people from Ludlow we have listening to this, but if you are, I will remind you that Southwest was number 4 in my poll this week. Or excuse me, last week. Last week. It was the other 8-man gentleman that didn't have them in the top 10. It took about 1 week for me to see that new offense that they have put together to realize that they're no joke. That being said, what happened to South Holt and Ottaway Holt it's disappointing. And I hope they learn from it. The only silver lining I could think of was watching Southwest and speaking to them after week 1. They talked about East Atchison. Both sides were like, hey, it's only week 1. It's early in the season. Last year, Southwest came in here to East Atchison, and basically it's the other way around. East Atchison whipped them, and they learned from it, advanced all the way to the state title. That is the only silver lining I can find right now for South Holt, because to be of the mindset of having a physical team, a physical offense that's going to beat you up, to get a team off 4 days rest, and for you to take that kind of beating, it's almost embarrassing, if not, but mostly disappointing. And I think maybe this could be a wake-up call for them. And they unfortunately for them, this week they have to face another team in East Atchison that is quite talented. And as I've spoken about earlier this week, if you lose to East Atchison, a team that I believe you're better than, you're really going to have to reevaluate everything that you've thought coming into this season. This is almost a must-win, I think, if you are Coach Peterson and the Spartans. Because if you drop to 1-2, then you're back to that mindset of, well, we are who we are, and this is just going to be another 6-5 season where we start out 1-2, we win some games along the way. Then you start losing confidence as you head into the Mound City matchup, a team that you have really struggled against, to say the least. And I think coming into this season, us in the 8-man media believed that South Holt was a 1-2 loss team. That was their floor. But now at maybe 1-2, then you're going to face a Platte Valley team that could be riding high coming into that matchup. Then Mound City, Rockport. If you lose confidence and don't gain that back this week, it could end up being a long season for a team that I had at number 3 coming into the season. Had them at number 1 last week. So we'll see if they can rebound this week. They have good leadership. They still have one of the best players in 8-man. And hopefully for them, it's just a bump in the road.
And then another team that had some confidence lacking after last week, and hopefully for their sake got a little bit of it back this week with a strong second half, was Worth County, who was scheduled to play Santa Fe. That game had to be canceled for Santa Fe COVID reasons, and then Coach Healy must have called up and down the state to find somebody, and found somebody out of state. They played Donovan West over in Kansas. I know they were down big early in that game, kind of rallied. What's that say about Worth County and maybe the fight they still have in them despite a super disappointing week one and a super disappointing half to start out week two, that they were able to rally like they did?
You know, with everything going on in 2020, it feels like it's been 5 years crammed into 9 months. And it kind of feels like it's been forever ago since I talked to Coach Healy a few weeks before the season. And this was a team that was number one in a lot of people's minds. Some people gave it to Mount City, being two-time defending state champs. But Worth County was right there. And since that moment, the wheels have completely fallen off. The wheels blew up, then fell off is basically what's going on. And I don't know if it's going to get any better for them. Losing Gladstone, that was tough. But you had Andrew Alarcon, Alex Reinhardt. You could lean on those guys. Just get by until Gladstone came back. He has a couple weeks then to prepare for districts playoffs. And, you're still thinking state title. Since then, they've also lost Reinhardt, who apparently decided that he, football wasn't his thing anymore. I hope it was the right decision for him. And, I hope that they gave him every opportunity to think about it. But that is a huge loss, not only offensively, but he was one of their best defensive players. After that week one game, South Holt, mostly dominated, but talking to Quinlan, he talked about Reinhardt just being a pain on the defensive side of the ball. So for Coach Healy, it's going to be a tough go the rest of the way, I think. There's still a little bit of talent on that team, but things have really gotten bad for them. And I hope, for those kids' sake, that things, they can figure something out. But I don't. Boy, that light at the end of the tunnel is hard to find for the Worth County Tigers right now.
Gotcha. And just transitioning now into look ahead to next week, which we've done a little bit here, but the Maryville Spoofhounds opened, as I mentioned before, MEC play with Chillicothe. It's also senior night, as we don't know what the rest of the year holds. So a lot of these schools are moving up their senior nights to make sure that the kids have them. So it's senior night in Maryville against Chillicothe, who has 2 losses already on the season. And they've been fairly close loss, a 14-point loss and a 6-point loss to Marshall and Kirksville, respectively. But with their triple option offense look, it's similar to what you see out of the service academies with an Army or Navy or something like that. So they're a really run-heavy team coming into the Hound Pound this week. And I think it's kind of interesting because in week one with Blair Oaks, they saw the RPO scheme that Blair Oaks does. Last week was more traditional, pound it, run it with Jace Reynolds, Harrisonville's great back. And this week you see a triple option look. So Matt Webb's defense has been tested in a lot of ways by the time this game is over. But with Chillicothe being 0-2, Maryville getting a lot of their guys back, I'm just going to go right into the pick segment here. And I'll be picking Maryville this week. I think they win it pretty handily. I think they're going to be pumped up to get a lot of their guys on the field. We talked about Connor Weiss being back, but they're also getting back a few linemen. Castile is back, who talking on the sideline to an unnamed player because I don't want to throw any of the other linemen under the bus, but I was told he was by far their best lineman, and they're going to be getting him back this week. So that's going to be a big boost for them, as well as a bunch of other kids coming back. So I'm picking the Spoof Hounds, and I don't think it's particularly close either. I would say maybe like a 35-21 type game, maybe not even that close, maybe like 35-12 or something. Because I think they're going to bring out some frustration, especially those kids that had to sit the last couple weeks. But I'll turn it over to you, Anthony, and your fearless Maryville picks so far this year. What do you got any faith in the Hounds this week?
I do. I think it'll be a little closer than you maybe believe. I spent 4 years going up against Chillicothe, and I know that physical offense they bring, and I think that kind of offense will maybe slow the game down and keep this one close. I do think, maybe 35-24. I think you were right in that area, maybe 1 to 2 scores. But I do think that Chillicothe will hang close. It's hard for me to really say. I don't know how good Kirksville and Marshall are, whether those are good losses, bad losses. It's hard for me to really say. But I do think they'll they'll keep it close. It'll be interesting to see how the kids coming back play. I don't know how much they've been able to do the last 2 weeks, and with only a couple days of practice, we'll see what they're able to do. But I do think that, especially last week, I didn't think that game would be close, let alone Maryville coming out with a win. So, they were impressive, and I think they'll win their second straight this week.
Yeah, I will say when I first got here, of course, that was Maryville's state championship year. And that year, Lafayette, Chillicothe, and Maryville were kind of the 3 big dogs in the MEC. Lafayette had Diego Bernard, and of course, Chillicothe had Brett Schaefer, Josh Killey, just a whole bunch of. Willard was a quarterback. He was very good. Those guys aren't walking through the door, I don't think, for Chillicothe right now. The last couple of years since that class has graduated, they've been down a little bit. I knew new coach, a very well-respected and good coach, I believe, with Tim Rulo, but they've had a new coach since those teams, kind of a new offense too, definitely a new offense. So tradition is always important, and Maryville knows that as much as anybody. But I also think they might be still down a little bit of talent from a couple years ago. And I have no doubt with Chillicothe's history, they'll get it back. But I don't think it happens this week against Maryville. And I think looking forward just for Chillicothe, finishing in the middle of the pack of the MEC would be a very good year for them, finishing behind some of those more powerful teams, Maryville included, assuming they get their guys back. But we'll see. Chillicothe could prove me wrong Friday night. Maryville obviously hopes they do not. But transition to our Nottoway County matchup of the week. All Nottoway County. They play all their home games here. There's no co-op with any other counties, so it's all Northwest Nottoway hosting Platte Valley and that Nottoway County showdown. I know going into the year, neither team was maybe thought of, and probably still isn't, as one of the top tier teams in 8-man. But Platte Valley, obviously a huge win last week. Just what are you looking for each team in this one, Anthony?
Well, for Northwest Nottoway, I'll start with them. I'm looking for them to. They had a lot of hope coming into the season that they would be better. This is it for them. The Stewartsville loss was a huge loss for them. A game we discussed, they probably should have won. but I think this is the time for them to show up and prove that they're not going to finish at the bottom without a fight. For Platte Valley, it's kind of the same thing that I talked about earlier. Last season, I remember they beat DeKalb on a Saturday afternoon, and then they went to Stewartsville as well, a game they also should have won, and they laid an egg. So we'll see if Platte Valley can continue that momentum from one week to another this week. As far as talent goes, they're both fairly even. Both have some good players. But as far as who will win, it should be a bit of a pick 'em. And just who comes in wanting it more, I think the old cliche will decide on who wins this game.
So with that being said, who are you picking?
I'm going to go with Northwest. Home game for them. I think it's a close game. I don't expect either team to run away with it. I wouldn't be surprised if Platte Valley won. But since Northwest is 0-2, I think they may be a little bit hungrier for a win, and I expect them to win a close one.
I'm going the other way. I'm picking Platte Valley. You saw Mr. Jose Rivera live last week. I just saw the numbers, and those numbers speak to me that maybe Platte Valley has one additional star than we thought they had going into the year, because those numbers, you can't deny them. So I'm picking Platte Valley. I think it will be a close game. But I think they go up there and get the win in Burlington Junction and just find a way to get to 2-1, going into if they get to 2-1, what will be a this game on your calendar game against South Holt and Ottaway Holt the next week, where I could see them winning this game and still not getting the respect they maybe think they need, and because the shorthanded Rockport team they beat and Northwest and Ottaway doesn't garner a whole lot of credibility in 8-man yet. So I could see them really making a statement that following week against South Holt if they do get, like you mentioned before, a little down on themselves if they drop this East Action game this week.
Yeah, so, and it would be easy to point at Rockport being down, but they weren't down that much. And it was the same thing with Platte Valley. You lose your best player on the opening kickoff, that could really deflate a team. And so it was impressive to see the way they bounced back in that one.
We've seen that, honestly, with Maryville the week before last, where you lose everybody right before the game and you have to adjust, and it's hard to adjust mid-game with guys playing different spots. And Carter Luke does so much for that team, and to not be able to prepare for it at all, let alone days of practice, to not have even 2 hours to draw up and do a new play or something, or to tell guys that they're going in this different role, and to still come out and get that win. I think that's even more impressive than being shorthanded and knowing all week you're going to be shorthanded. So, anyway, you feel better about my Platte Valley pick.
Yeah, and credit Trevor McQueen. He didn't put up the numbers that Jose did, but Trevor McQueen was so much better in week 2 than he was in week 1. Really showing some athleticism. He had the 52-yard touchdown pass that was beautifully thrown. So if he can continue to improve, he could help them go a long ways in being, maybe not fighting for a conference title, because I don't think they're there, but being much more competitive. Talking to Cree, they're thinking at least 4 wins now, which is an amazing place to be for Platte Valley, and I could see that too.
Yeah, they anybody who's seen Trevor McQueen play baseball knows he's got a pretty good arm. So that's I know Cree the other day mentioned how important he was to the basketball team last year, but baseball was my introduction to Trevor, and kid can sling it a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how they do now, assuming that they are without Carter Luke the rest of the way, and how they adjust to that. But moving on to South Holt, Nottoway Holt, who we just talked about, we're kind of a little nervous about them. At least I am going forward.
Yep.
And it especially is this week with East Atchison, and I believe that's a home game, I believe, for South Holt, Nottoway Holt, but a must win, like you said before. What do you think are kind of the keys for both sides, and who do you got in that one, Anthony?
The Spartans, you just have to get back to being physical. You can't get outmanned. And it'll be difficult. They ran into Sears from Southwest, who's not the biggest defensive lineman, but he is also one of the more talented ones in the state. And it won't be much easier this week going up with Ian Headland on the other side. So they need to get back to being physical and really play like they did in the third quarter of last week's game. Maybe you came in sleepwalking a little bit. Talking to Coach Peterson, at the East Atchison Southwest game, he was confident and maybe a little overconfident in what he was seeing from Southwest, and maybe that showed last week. Maybe this was the wake-up call that they needed. For East Atchison, it's doing more what you did last week, getting Kalen Merriweather involved in the offense. Him and Headland are two of the more talented guys in the conference. And so let them be your leaders. Don't put it in Josh Brown's hands to move the offense. Get it to Kalen, get it to Ian, let them do their thing. And for South Holt, it's all about stopping those two players. Make someone else beat you on that side, and you should be fine. I think South Holt will bounce back and win. Maybe that's just me hoping for my prediction with them being number one for me last week.
Who you got number one this week? Because just for the record, you had Worth County going into week one. They go down. You had South Holt, Nottoway Holt last week. They go down. Who's got the Anthony Crane kiss of death this week?
It's not Mound City, who rumor has it they seem to believe I have an issue with them. I don't. Let me go out here and say, if anyone from Mound City is listening, I hold no grudges against you guys. My whole point going into this, everyone else in the poll, and I've heard this from you as well, you got to give it to them because they won state last year. For me, last season ended November. I traveled. I saw each team practice. I talked to every team. So my poll was going off of this season. While I understand everyone else and giving it to the defending state champions until they prove otherwise, I can't give my number one vote to a team that begins with Stewartsville and Platte Valley, and a team that has to replace 4 all-state guys. You're just not getting my number one vote. That being said, they were number 2 this week for me, so you're getting closer. I also, speaking to Devin and you, have said if you can win the next 2 weeks against a good Albany team and a very good Southwest team, you then will get my number one vote. But back to your question, North Shelby was number 1 this week.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out who I should pick against this week.
Well, I tell you what, if they lose to Hardin, which Coach Thacker is an amazing coach, such a good guy, and really throwing being objective out the window, I hope that team wins every game. Just because I like him so much, and they've gone through so much this year. That being said, North Shelby should win by 50. North Shelby has one of the best offensive lines in the state. Somehow they replaced all of that talent in the backfield they had last year with guys who are just as good. They bring back a junior running back who is going to start in that backfield as a sophomore. So I can only assume he's got to be special if he was going to start over who they had last year.
We got down.
So, that being said, the Raiders will fall this week to Norburn Hardin Central, and you will no longer want to be number 1 in my poll.
To wrap up the North Shelby podcast here, that's it. But anyway, getting us back on track here a little bit with um, Anthony picked South Holt, Nottoway Holt to beat East Ashton. I'm going the other way. I haven't picked South Holt, Nottoway Holt yet this season. Same way that Anthony says he doesn't have a problem with Mound City. I don't have a problem with South Holt, Nottoway Holt. I just don't. I haven't liked their matchups all year. I didn't know how down Worth County was before week one. And then the last week, I correctly picked Southwest Livingston to beat them. So this week, after East Ashton seemed to make those adjustments last week, I get Kalen Merriweather the ball. I believe that they will continue that this week. And just looking at comparative scores, East Ashton gave Southwest Livingston a lot better game than South Holt, Nottoway Holt did. So I'm going to go and pick the Wolves to get a big win. But honestly, that game could go either way, and it should be a very interesting one, to say the least.
And for the people of Graham and Oregon, please do not let John's hatred towards you stop you from buying the Maryville Forum and reading our excellent coverage.
For the record, the people of Graham, I love Graham. Heck of a volleyball start to the season. They are 4-2 this year. Shanna Culp looking great out there. Emma Bohannon, Chloe Jenkins, Kaylin Edmondson. I can get the whole lineup in there. Peyton Walker, spoiler alert for those, she will be an Athlete of the Week nominee this week. Krista Hart, just to fill out the rest of the starting lineup anyway for your Trojanet volleyball program. So no ill will towards Graham here. Just not a big believer in you this week when you have to face that bunch from Tarkio and Fairfax. So
well, you get a 50-50 shot. You thought that big offensive line and defensive line of Worth County was going to slow them down.
There we go. We're
not great at picking.
We're 0-2 this weekend or this year so far in South Holt, Nottoway Holt picking games. So I'm a perfect, or not a perfect, but I'm 1-1 so far. So I'll go with my knowledge. But anyway, before we get off on another tangent, one more game to pick here, and that is Worth County and Schuyler County. And I'll go first. I'll keep it simple. Worth County bounces back. Schuyler County, I'd be lying if I said I was a super knowledgeable Schuyler County fan, but I know they've had some tough ones so far. So I'm picking Worth County, shorthanded or not, guys quitting the team or not, to get out there and get a win.
Let me hop back on my soapbox and say that Coach Randall has them guys in Schuyler County believing. He's a good dude. I think they're moving the right direction up there. First year in 8-man, had a big opening week win. Came back down to earth against a Pattonsburg team that is really good last week. I think they'll put up a fight for a little bit, and I think the game will be closer than it would have been had the team that Worth County had entering the season been playing this week. But yeah, I think you're right. Worth County ends up winning by 30 points.
Is the key for Worth County at this point kind of keeping things together? I know they've already lost Reinhardt, but it seems like we're kind of down on Worth County. But if we get 6 weeks down the road here and start getting ready for the playoffs and Gladstone comes back, do all of a sudden they become contenders to make a surprise run through at least a couple rounds of districts? You don't see it happening, huh?
Well, the problem for Worth County is the GRC. And as a man who covered the SEC last year, a lot of similarities there. Albany may be a top 2 team in the 275. In the GRC, they're not. Stanberry seems to be back to being Stanberry. Pattonsburg is really good. Albany, I mean, even King City could give you fits.
King City looked really good in the jamboree that I saw in
Yeah.
Worth County.
Well, I was really high on them, and then their quarterback broke his collarbone again, and
Yeah.
that hurts a team that is still young and really talented, and maybe one of the more underrated running backs uh, in the state. A big kid and is great defensively. That may be the biggest issue for them moving forward. Is I don't know what this team will be in 4 weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks, whenever Gladstone gets back. Best case scenario, they are what they were last year. And I say this because, Aiden Gladstone wasn't a great defender last year, and he was the only guy missing in that opening week against Southolt. So I see them still having a lot of issues on the defensive side. So best case scenario, you get Alarcon and Gladstone to improve that offense to where you can at least get into a scoring battle with the team. So that's what you got to hope for. But I like I said, I picked Worth County #1 heading into the season. So it seems odd for me to be so down on them. And hopefully in the next few weeks, the tide kind of turns a little bit for them. But it has just been an awful 2.5 weeks for them to start this season.
Gotcha. And as you can tell, you won't be listening to this on a Wednesday, but it's Red Wednesday right now for both Anthony and myself. So we'll end this with one more prediction: Texans Chiefs. Anthony, who you got?
Boy, I hate to be a homer, and what's weird is I continue.
I didn't think it was going to take this much explanation to make that.
Well, I was going to explain. It's been a weird feeling for a guy who's never seen. Not a Royals fan, so I've never really seen a team win a championship. But so entering this season, it's been a weird. And I don't know if it's the pandemic as well. It's been a weird thing to get excited for football. I don't know if I'm, still riding that Super Bowl high, but that being said, it's hard to imagine many teams being better than the Chiefs, including the Texans, who lost their best wide receiver, traded him away. I just think they have the better coach. They have the better quarterback. They're just better overall. So I think the Chiefs win 35-21.
Gotcha. And I'm going to say I think defense has come out with something to prove a little bit. I'm going 28-17. The Chiefs win. The weird thing about the Chiefs this year, which I'm a Vikings fan by nature, but the Chiefs, I've just been around here so long. I've gone to enough Chiefs games that the Chiefs are easily my #2 team. And I'm just a regular Royals fan. I've always been a Royals fan. So the weird thing about the Chiefs versus where the Royals are is the Royals had such a definite clock on how long they were going to be good. Like, you knew when the wheels were going to come off when Moose and Hosmer and all of those guys were free agents, Kane, the whole lot of them. With the Chiefs, they have Pat Mahomes for 12 more years. Like, sky is the limit. Like, you're going to be, as long as that guy's your quarterback and healthy, like, you're going to be a playoff team for the next 12 years. Like, there's no way you don't get one of the 3 now wild card slots at the very least.
And you
get as good as Broncos fans think they're going to get, which I'm not 100% sold on that yet. But it's just remarkable how good this Chiefs team could be. And
as much as I love Damian Williams, you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was an impressive guy last year in college.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be, especially in that offense. I am of the belief that running backs are a bit of a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
But he should be in the upper echelon of running backs for the next few years.
Oh, you can disagree with taking a running back in the first round, which I normally would. Um, but once you got him, there is no doubt he is going to be good. He was not my number one running back in the draft, but if I was the Chiefs, he would have been my number one running back in the draft because he just fits that so perfectly.
And
And
they've earned that.
yeah,
Patrick Mahomes wasn't a lot of teams' number one quarterback, and it seems like
this Big 12 fans
when
love
when
Patrick Mahomes the whole time. So
well,
yeah,
yeah. But like when Brett Veach comes to you and is like, "Hey, Pat's the best quarterback I've ever seen," maybe the best player, he said. When they come to you and they say Clyde is the best running back we've seen since,
compare him to Brian Westbrook.
yeah, Brian Westbrook,
which isn't the best. Just so everybody knows, he's not the best running back in the history of football, Brian Westbrook.
no,
But
but
he's the best
he's
fit
really
for
good.
Andy Reid offense Andy Reid has ever had. Like him and Darren Sproles, which there's also been plenty of Darren Sproles comparisons out there.
Yeah, but if you get a better version of Brian Westbrook, that is a damn good running back.
So anyway, now that we previewed everything from Norburn Hardin Central to the Kansas City Chiefs tomorrow night, Thursday night, if you're listening to this on Thursday, I think it's time to sign off. So until next week, I've been John Dykstra, and that's Anthony Crane, and tune in next week for another Maryville Forum Sports podcast.